Going to jail sounds pretty terrifying. While we can't imagine going to jail, the world is full of horrible people who deserve to be put behind bars. When these people get to know that they're being put behind bars, their world shatters. Well, only for some time, others don't have any reaction to it. Besides, to be put behind bars for your life is something one can only get when one takes another person's life. This is why taking away a person's life isn't justified. This being said, today we will bring you reactions to convicts who have received a life sentence. This will be a mixed bag, so we'd like you to watch this video until the end. Without further ado, let's get right into this video. Number 7. Esteban Carpio. Esteban Carpio is a convicted prison inmate serving a life sentence for the murder of a policeman in 2005. He was convicted for the murder of Providence Police Detective Sergeant James L. Allen on April 17, 2005. At Providence Police Headquarters. Ironically, Carpio was being questioned by the Providence Police for stabbing of an 85-year-old woman. Madeleine Gata and Allen were present in the room with him. Gata left the room to get water for Carpio, after which Carpio snatched Allen's gun and shot him twice, killing him. He then jumped out of the room's window and ended up being apprehended 45 minutes later. When Carpio came in for his arraignment, he wore a mask covering his mouth. This was to prevent him from spitting at or biting others. His eyes, face, and cranial regions were all swollen. These injuries were sustained due to his jump from the third floor of the building following a police altercation. During the trial, Christopher Zarella, a police state detective who helped in the arrest, testified that he had punched Carpio in the face 3 times and even broke a few of his bones. On June 27, 2006, the jury of this case found Carpio guilty of stabbing Gata and the murder of Detective Allen. While the verdict was being heard, Carpio was emotionless, while his family burst into tears. His family began to make accusations of police brutality during this time. Number 6. Jaleel Smith Riley. In 2016, Jaleel Smith Riley pleaded guilty on August 11th to aggravated murder and attempted murder, but then decided to withdraw his plea against the advice of his attorneys. In October of 2016, Hamilton County Common Pleas Judge Charles Kubicki rejected Smith Riley's change of heart and sentenced him to life in prison without having a possibility of parole. After he received his sentence, Smith Riley collapsed on the courtroom's floor. Police then proceeded to pull Smith Riley to his feet, interrupted Kubicki. Smith Riley's defense team indicated to the court an appeal was likely but hadn't been filed yet. Smith Riley was involved in an armed robbery on November 16th in Norwood. Portia Brooks and Aaron Martin were inside a parked car when Smith Riley approached and knocked on the window with a handgun. Smith Riley forced Martin out of the passenger's side, went through his pockets and shot him in the head. Martin managed to survive his injuries, but the worst was yet to come. Smith Riley then leaned into the car and fired 2 shots at Brooks, and 3 days later she died. "He ruined my life. He not only killed her, but he killed me, mentally, emotionally. He killed my identity as a mother of 3, said Portia's mother, Sharon Brooks. We're left with nothing, and that's because of him." Number 5. Data Wright. In 2017, Data Wright was unapologetic in court after he received a life sentence for the killing of Jordan Klee in 2016. Klee was found dead on the pathway near the Pink Lake Village Cooperative in the 2600 block of Adarine Drive on Ann Arbor's west side. Wright, along with 2 others, were accused of attempting to steal controlled substances along with clothes and shoes, as per court records. After the hearing was read out and Data Wright couldn't do anything but laugh at this verdict, Judge David S. Schwartz allowed prosecutors time to consult the family of the slain 18-year-old Pioneer High School student to see if they'd prefer he rejects the sentencing agreement in place and send the case to trial. After an hour's delay, Assistant Washtenaw County Prosecuting Attorney John Vella came back with their answer, after which Schwartz went forward with Wright's plea and a sentence of 25 to 52 years in prison. Klee's senior year was supposed to be a celebration, but it became a nightmare, his mother said. Wright simply laughing at the verdict shows us how he's lost the plot. Number 4. Jacob Matthew Morgan. In 2015, Jacob set his house on fire when he was 17 years old and killed his 14-month-old sibling. As a result of this act, Morgan had charges of involuntary murder, adolescent endangerment, and 3rd degree filed against him. Per a judicial record, he started 2 fires in his home, one to the left of the new kid and the other to the left of his house. Nonetheless, Morgan refused to state how the fire began. After his life sentence was read out to him, Morgan was shaking and began to cry. He covered his face in horror, but that wasn't working in the slightest bit on the judge. It looked as if he was in deep remorse, but it wasn't enough to get him a reduced sentencing. After his sentencing, Morgan applied once for parole, but it was subsequently denied. As a teenager, one has all the sense not to burn down a house, so there wasn't any point in crying in front of a judge after the crime was committed. Number 3. Lucasi Kendall. Kendall is convicted of second-degree murder with a firearm and attempted second-degree murder for a 2012 shooting which killed Kijwan Bird and left Michael Smathers paralyzed. Kendall fired at Bird 8 times, with 4 shots going into Bird's back. Bird was then murdered, and Smathers was paralyzed. Smathers recalls the entire incident. "The only thing I remember was opening my car door and him telling me to put my hands up. After that, I was shot." Kendall represented himself at the trial, during which his former attorney, Carlos Pelayo Gonzalez, said, "We have physical evidence and testimonial evidence has been given pre-trial that there was another gun involved. But Mr. Kendall, because he's representing himself, doesn't know how to get that evidence to the trial." Kendall told jurors, "The reason the evidence was fabricated is that I'm white." Despite a warning from the judge, he added, "The subjects I shot were African American. I can prove that. What they're not allowing me to tell you is that I was arrested because of the George Zimmerman shooting." Kendall had nothing to say for himself and was silent during the entire hearing. He was then sentenced to 25 years for the second-degree murder of Bird and 35 with a 25-year minimum mandatory term for the attempted second-degree murder of Smathers. Number 2. Ryan Stone. In 2015, Ryan Stone, age 30, was sentenced to 160 years. He will likely become eligible for parole after 75 years. A Douglas County jury convicted Stone of 18 charges in April, including attempted manslaughter, first-degree assault, and child abuse. During the pursuit in March 2014, Stone reached speeds of up to 100 miles per hour while he raced and sped towards ongoing traffic. "You held this community hostage for 90 minutes that day," Douglas County District Judge Paul King told Stone before sentencing him. Trooper Bellaman He was injured when Stone hit the trooper while driving at about 90 miles per hour. He had deployed a device to deflate tires on the vehicle Stone was going shortly before he was hit by the car. He's leg was shattered in 20 pieces. Had he been struck any other way, he would have probably died. Ryan's reaction to his hearing was rather tearful. He blamed drugs for all he did and asked the judge to give him a break, which he deservedly denied. The funniest part is that he said he was at peace with the whole thing. Number 1. Eric Pedlin. Eric Pedlin received a maximum sentence in 2015 when he shook his infant so violently he became permanently disabled. Pedlin was a resident of Youngstown, Ohio, and was sentenced to 11 years on 2 separate charges of endangering children. Prosecutors say that it was on March 1, 2017, when Pedlin shook his son, who was 3 months old, so hard that he permanently lost his hearing and seeing ability. When the boy reached the hospital, he had brain bleeding and hemorrhages in his eyes and was unresponsive. Prosecutors asked Judge Anthony Donofrio to impose the maximum sentence possible due to the boy's injuries. Baby Eric Jr. was the biological son and is the biological son of the defendant. He was in a position to protect, care for, and nurture him, and instead he abused him and caused great harm to him, said Assistant Mahoning County Prosecutor Jennifer McLaughlin. After 2.5 months in the hospital and about 3 surgeries, the baby survived. The downside is that the boy will be on a feeding tube for the rest of his life and will never be able to walk. After the hearing, Pedlin shook his head and murmured abuses towards the judge. He was outraged, but he could be angry in jail as much as he wanted. Do you think all these life sentences were justified? Let us know in the comments. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.